folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And you didn't think we were going to show up, but here we are, woohoo, with my co-host David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers. Thank you for being here tonight.
As always, we greet you with the love and the honor of the infinite creator, and we always pray that you're doing well. So thank you again for showing up for another Tuesday night, and we have the links.
Yes, we do. Yeah, sometimes the links just disappear.
Yep.
But hey, that's the way it is. You know, things work that way.
I lost my sausage link. Oh my gosh.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Anyway, good to see you all. F Kitty says happy. It's not a Monday. Yep. Anyway, I hit 1,000 subscribers this weekend and lost one, and now I'm back to 999. Go figure. But that's YouTube for you. It goes up and it goes down. It's like a roller coaster, you know, like they're playing games on you. Yep, Lucky's got it right. Happy Tribal Tuesday. Anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about the what the heck is her name? Anyway, her husband was. We're going to talk about a woman, actually. That's what it boils down to. Squaw Sketchum. Yeah, Squaw Sketchum. She was the wife of, I think it's New Moon. And I got this cool little book that's from way back in the day, and it's called The Family Library, number 46, from the Thatcher's Indian Biography, Volume 2. Now, can you believe there's a Volume 2 when this thing was printed back in, let's see, when was it printed? We're going to look that up. 1843. So in 1843, they were printing books about the Indians and how things, went back then and what they were doing. And heck, they haven't even conquered the West yet, you know. Some of the Indians out west hadn't even seen a white man yet. And they were writing books about biographies of them. Anyway, don't forget, this is the last week of Milky Way Soul Tribe merch. Get yours today. There's the link. Nina put it in. And you too can have one of these cool shirts like I got on. There's a bunch of varieties. The other one's got my face on there. Yay. See, you can feel my face on your chest. Anyway, the last week of it ends at the end of the week. So get yours right now before they're all gone. And then they got these cool ones here. It's got the little, you got me, and then you got Brian over here in the little, star thing with the pyramid and over the earth. Then we honor him every day. Right?
Yep.
So miss that guy. Anyway, so tonight we're going to get into that. And you got a great story picked out for us.
Yeah, how Mad Buffalo fought the Thunderbird.
Woohoo! Hope he won. Or was his head chopped off? You know how that goes in those stories. Lost his head in the game. And Thunderbird came out winning. Oh, okay. So we're going to get right into this as soon as I pull up some stuff because, got to have some pictures of things. Believe it or not. Oh, that's how it works. Oops. Then go this way. Gotta do the computer magic on these things like this. And there we go. And present, share screen. Yeah, here it is. Share. Okay. Well, everybody, here we go. They actually have Queen of the Mystic. You thought Mystic stuff was happening just here recently because of, TV shows and crap? Nope. Queen of the Mystic. Squaw Sketchum. And Mystic was a place. So don't get that wrong. They made a statue of her, of course. And we don't know what she looked like because this was back in the 1600s. I was lucky enough to find this old book, and it describes her a little bit. And the old book is quite the thing, but we're going to just do a little bit of reading about her in anyway. Okay, so Squaw Sketchum, translated into Lady Chief. We don't get to talk about the women very much, so thought this was appropriate. She owned a large portion of land which encompassed much of a present-day Charlestown, Arlington, Medford, Malden, Winchester, and she was married to Namafetsamet, translated into New Moon, who was a Sketchum of the Pawtucket Confederation of Indian Tribes until his death in 1619. Squaw Sketchum, his name has been lost to history, ruled after his death, and her sons Woonahokamham and John Sagamore, and Monopeapate Sagamore James. Now they named you notice they named the white man's names, and Weenapolkin Sagamore George. So she had 3 sons that we know of. Squaw Sketchum, her sons, and other leaders in the area struggled to live peacefully with the massive influx of Puritan settlers in 1630. Now, we really have a hard time imagining there was an influx of immigrants coming into the country, but yes, the immigrants were coming into the country in 1630. Go figure. The Puritans arrived to the region during a time of constant war between the Pawtucket and the Tarians. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Taratinis, I guess that's the Abanaskis of Maine. An unidentified disease killed a large part of the population, further weakening the Pawtucket and rendering them unable to stop the Puritan migration. How lucky for the Puritans to have a disease come in and kill off all your enemies. The British colonization of the Americas began in 1607 in Jamestown, Virginia, when 100 settlers founded the first permanent English settlement in North America. However, repossession under King Charles I in England led to the migration of 20,000 Puritans to New England between 1629 and 1642. Knowing that the settlers would seize it anyway, Squaw Sketchum sold part of her land to maintain peace. Wow. Okay. And she was pretty smart in a way. Might as well sell it if you're going to lose it. In 1636 and 1639, she sold land to a young man named Jonathan Gibbons, son of Edward Gibbons. Jonathan was a mariner and lived primarily in Bermuda, a little ways away. His daughter loved and inherited the farm following his death in 1658. After her second marriage to Reverend John Fowle, she moved to Bermuda. Love's children divided the 480-acre farm amongst themselves after her death in 1701. Her eldest son, John, inherited a large part of the estate and built a home known as the Fowle Reed Wyam House around 1706. That's about 100 years later. A year later, in 1707, John Fowle sold his home as well as 85 acres of land to Daniel Reed, a yeoman. Yeomen were not slave-holding family farmers. Okay, so that's what happened there. Now, this is part of the land, as you can see. And she owned, it was a good chunk here. And the Indians use rivers for roads. If you owned a crossway with 3 rivers coming into it, you had it made. You know, if you set up a camp here, you got it made. This is like the intersection of an interstate, people. Anyway,
Can I ask a question?
go ahead.
I thought I heard you say back at the beginning of that they had so many acres and that they sold them. Sold the acres.
Yes, she sold her land, and then the land got
Okay.
sold to the.
All right, but here's my question: did she buy it, or did they just clear it? You know what I mean? Because
No,
back then, at that point, they were just like came over on the boat and everything was a free for all. So I was just curious as to they got it for nothing and then she sold it.
it's gonna tell a little bit more in this storybook that I'll read out of this history book. But basically the deal is her tribe had 3,000 strong warriors, and they were a very powerful tribe. After this disease came through, it wiped them down to about 300 men. And you can't do much with 300 guys. You can barely protect yourself or get food. So she decided, here comes the white man, and like it said, 20,000 Puritans are settling, and they're wanting room. And she decided to sell off a good chunk of her land because, they're going to take it. They're probably going to come and take it. So
that's sort of where I was at with that. It's like she didn't buy it, but she sold it.
Yeah, she bought it with blood, by protecting it. That was her ancestors' land. That was
right. That's what I mean. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sorry. Me, got to interrupt for the dumbest reasons.
That's why it's a good questioning. So anyway, like I said, that's
I wonder how much she made.
I don't know. But they paid, remember back in the day, Indians valued wampum. And so that was their currency is wampum. And let's see if we can see this. Mystic, right here. If we blow this up, Mystic is right there. And next to a great swamp. This is the Pequot and the Mohegan. And there's a lot of rivers. Mystic River here. Connecticut, but the point is that this area was getting settled. This is where it was good farmland and stuff, and the Puritans were coming over, and we're going to read about this in a second. Okay, so this I thought was very interesting because I don't really hear, and unless you read these old books, you're not going to hear all these really good details because the modern books, even that article we read, they kind of wipe all that stuff away. They just, wipe it all away and just go with the main groove, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, they ignore the little stuff.
Yeah, so you miss all them details. You really got to like buy a book or go study, and they skip, even the history books skip over a lot of that. And so here we go. Having heretofore had occasion frequently introduce the names of Indians who subjected themselves more or less to the government of Massachusetts. Remember, the Massachusetts has already been settled, and they got probably a couple thousand people living there or something. We propose in the chapter to notice a few of the most prominent of that class who have not yet been mentioned. Some years previous to the arrival of the English, the various Massachusetts tribes, properly so called, are believed to have been confederated. Isn't it amazing, before the white man settled there, how they decided to join hands and become a confederation just before the white man settled? Isn't that weird? But that's where the stories of Hiawatha came in. Hiawatha came in and made them do this confederation because he said, you're going to need it. Okay. The confederation, like the Poconuts and others, under the government of one great sachem, whose name was Namaspisipsmet, or New Moon. His unusual residence was in Medford, near Mystic Pond. He was killed in 1619 by what enemy is unknown. 2 years, and see that he was killed by an enemy, and seeing that little short bit we read in that article, it just said he died. You see the difference? You getting killed or just dying is two different things. So 2 years
Yeah,
after,
but it is interesting that they noted that an Indian had been killed.
yes,
I mean,
yes,
and they could have just, but it was significant enough that they wrote it down.
yeah, exactly, because you just never hear about that.
Right. How many more were just killed and nobody knows their name?
That is absolutely true. Okay, so this is 1619. Now, 2 years afterwards, a Plymouth party visited this section, and then they discovered the remains of one of Nemapatsmet's forts. Now, listen to the description of this. It was built in a valley. There was a trench about it, breast high, and with a fury of palisades reaching up more than 30 feet.
Ooh.
So, 30 feet in the air. Now, that's like a giant fort with a moat around it.
Yep.
What were they building a giant fort with a moat? 30 feet in the air. Who were they fighting off? You know what I'm saying?
20-foot giants.
Yeah, well, this is the stuff you never hear about. It was accessible only in one direction by a narrow bridge. The Sketcham's grave had been made under the frame of a house within the enclosure, which was still standing, and another upon the neighboring hill, marked the spot where he fell in battle. His dwelling house had been built on a large scaffold 6 feet high, also near the summit of the hill. It is evident that Nemespat was a chieftain of a very considerable state of power. His successor, to a certain extent, was his widow, well known to history as Squaw Sketchum, and otherwise called the Massachusetts Queen. It is probably from the latter circumstance, in part, that some modern historians have described her as inheriting the power of her husband. But this is believed to be incorrect. We find no evidence of it among the old writers, though it appears, on the other hand, that some of the other Massachusetts tribes were at war with hers when the English first made her acquaintance. It seems highly probable that these were the enemy rebels, we should perhaps say, whom the Nesemet fell in attempting to subdue. His failure and death were sufficient without the aid of that terrible pestilence, which reduced the number of Massachusetts warriors from 3,000 to 300. Remember the smallpox or whatever they were getting? I mean, it was killing them off left and right. So you got 3,000 warriors, and then, each one of those guys has got a wife and kids and blah, 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 blah. So can you imagine how many died? And reduced them down from 3,000 warriors to 300 to prevent any attempts on the part of his widow for recovery or continuing his own ancient dominion. Still, the Squaw Sketchum governed at least the remnants of one tribe. So remember, each group has many tribes in it. And when you only got 300 warriors, you're not governing a whole lot of people. The Confederation was basically over. She also laid claim to territory in various places, and among the rest to what is now Concord, a grant of which place she joined with 2 or 3 other Indians in conveying to original settlers in 1635. And that must have been the guy we were talking about here a little earlier. Previous to this date, she had taken a second husband, Wapaconwet, I guess, Wapaconwet. the chief priest of her tribe, he being by custom entitled to the hand of his Sketchum's widow. So, there's a level of hierarchy there. Like she couldn't just get married to anybody. I guess, he was a, top man or top priest or chief or whatever it was. He had first the land was paid for in wampum. Ah, see, I knew it. Wampum. Remember, the wampum is the money of the land back in the day. Hatchets, hoes, knives, cotton, cloth, and chins. I don't know what chins is. Besides which, Wapakonawet, who figured only as an evidence of this case, received the gratuity of a suit of cotton. So see, they say she sold the land, but really he sold the land. And he got a suit of cotton cloth, a hat, a white linen band, shoes, stockings, and a great coat. Several years after the sale of Concord, Squaw Sketchum visited Boston for the purpose of subjecting herself to the Massachusetts government. That object she effected. There, where the priest was included in the submission, or what was the sequel of his history, or even hers, does not appear. The Squaw Sketchum, like her husband, the New Moon, had maintained her principal dignity in our early annals as the parent of Wahagaham and Mapawapamet, better known as Sagamore John and Sagamore James. Notice they didn't mention Sagamore George. I don't know why. The former lived before the English came as at the old residence of his father in Medford. Subsequently, at Winnishemet, anciently called Rumley Marsh, and situated partly in Chelsea and partly in Sagas. James, who was Sketchum of the Sagas Indians and had jurisdiction of Lynn and Marblehead, resided on Sycamore Hill near the eastern end of Lynn Beach. And you can see, I couldn't pronounce those either. Richard the Red's in the house. Yeah, so they're talking about Sagamore Hill. I don't know where Sagamore Hill is. It's on, I don't think it's on here, but it's got to be in this area right here. They're talking about, I don't know where Marblehead is. Lynn Beach. I'm sure that's not on here either. Those are names of days gone by. Let's see. John was one of the best, as well as earliest friends of the settlers of Boston. And Boston is the best friend of Boston ever had amongst the natives. And by their descendants, his memory should be cherished, for that, if no other reason, on all occasions he was courteous, kind, and frank. Soon after their coming, he engaged with the government to make compensation for damages done by his subjects, and to fence in his territories, both which he did. During the same year of 1630, he seasonably gave warning to the Charleston people of a plot formed against them among some of the neighboring Indians, an act on the mention of which an old writer pays him deserved compliment of having always loved the English. His attachment was justified by the conduct of his new ally and friends, for though he often brought compliments before the Massachusetts authorities, it was rarely without effect, as it was without cause. At one time, 2 of his wigwams were carelessly set on fire by the English fowlers and destroyed. The chief offered was a servant of Richard Salstone Stall, and the court ordered him to give satisfaction, and he did, being molested in 7 yards of cloth. Oh, so they burnt his wigwams and they gave him 7 yards of cloth. How about that? Well, I suppose back in the day that was very, very valuable.
Yeah.
Valued, oh boy, here's the value. They even give you the value. Valued at 50 shillings sterling. So that's 50 shillings of silver. I don't even know what that adds up to. How much is a shilling?
It's better than wampum.
Yes, yes. The act of firing one of the buildings was not very easy proved, but, says the court, least he should think us not sagacious enough to find it out, and so should depart discerningly from us. We gave both him and his subjects satisfaction for them both. So when he and his brother James, a few weeks afterwards, applied to the governor for an order to procure and return of 20 beaver skins, which had been obtained unfairly from them by the Englishmen, the governor entertained them kindly and gave them his letter. And John must have been permitted to manage his relations with other Sketchums also, as he pleased. For when Chickabot fought with the Cananaceus in 1632, as we shall soon see, he also joined him on the head of at the head of 30 men, and in fact recorded not only without censure but without comment. James was more troublesome personage, and with more than once in difficulty with both Indians and English, a party of a formidable Eastern people. This is where the Tartanis attacked him in 1631 and slew 7 of his men, wounded both him and his brother John, and carried off his wife captive. Boy, these people don't hold back one bit, do they? So, what does he do? He goes ask for help. Hubbard observers, and he had treacherously killed some of the Tartaris before this, and was therefore the less pitted of the English that were informed thereof. But the later nevertheless procured the redemption of his wife. The following extract from Miss Winthrop's journal throws some light on both on the authority which he exerted upon his own subjects and the liberties he took with the English. The government, in which must be observed, he made a prudent regulation forbidding the sale of arms to the natives. So the natives were getting guns, and then they were doing bad deeds. Go figure. Yeah.
Did you say it was Englishmen, though, that had stolen the beaver pelts or the pelts?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he was compensated. And
right.
I think he learned that, if I just, say that the English did it, they'll compensate me with stuff. And do I blame him? No, not really. Because, he's probably he probably figured out how to buffalo them a little bit and get a free ride. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it also shows, a couple of things in that story. Who were the arbitrators of that?
Yeah.
So there must have been, when the Pilgrims first came over, they brought common law with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what was going on in England and over there at the time. So they brought common law. So through the common law, they it is assumed now, but how else did he get compensation? And who was going to enforce the compensation? You know what I mean? So there was a bunch of stuff. Somebody knew something, and they grabbed him by the scruff and said, "Hey, you stole his stuff. Well, now you need to give him compensation." You know what I mean? So somebody saw them steal it, and somebody, there's a lot more to the story, but, how did they know he needed compensation? But what I wanted to bring out is that in those couple of sentences, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yes.
There's the court case. They did some, they spoke to witnesses anyway. So, and so the fact that they would give an Indian, any kind of compensation, that says a lot too.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up.
No, you're right. That's the thing. I think in the beginning, when there wasn't so many Indians, and the English were very, I should say, not as powerful as they, later became. Like it said in that the article that we first read about, there was it started out with 100, founding Jamestown, and little by little it started growing, and eventually it was 20,000, which was probably more white men than Indians at that point.
Oh yeah, especially after almost 3,000 died from a plague,
Yeah.
and that was of just one tribe. So because there was a lot of them dying because of that. So,
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, and of course, if your tribe buddied up with the English, well, then they could help you fight your enemies, and they had stuff like clothing you could trade for. And it turns out that it seems to me that the English were kind of being friendly with the Indians, like, hey, we need these people. They're going to give us corn. They're going to show us how to, they're going to sell us their land without fighting for it. They're going to, do things for us. And they're going to try to become civilized like the white man, like wearing our clothes and working in the fields, like, and having a farm. And, oh, there's another thing I was reading in here about the word savage, right? What does the word savage mean? We're always calling them, they always said, oh, those Indians are savages, right?
Yep.
Do you have a clue?
Nope.
Yeah. Loosely translated back in those days, savage meant, men of the woods, or people that live in the woods, or something, like some sort of version like that. A translated thing would be, your people from the woods, your people in the woods. And of course, where the Indians live, in the woods. And then people moved in, and they would call them, oh yeah, those savages. Savages, they live in the woods. Well, after they did dastardly deeds and went to war, savage took on another meaning. And it's kind of like Indian. Indian was because Columbus was saying, Indian, you're from, this must be the West Indies. No, and it gets mistranslated all the time. And then the next thing you know, we're calling them Indians. And that wasn't the case at all. They called themselves something totally different.
Let me bring up something else too while I'm thinking about it. So the Pilgrims came over and they settled along the coast. Now think about this. They have no idea at that time how big the interior of the country is.
Yeah.
Nor how many people live in that wilderness.
Nope.
So I think that they were kinder and nicer to the native folks, in that they didn't know how many relatives they had out there in their woods. Seriously. I mean, yeah. They knew how many they were. There were, 200 of them sitting on the coast in the little, but they had no idea really how many of them lived out yonder. You know what I mean? So I think that gave them a lot of, well, we don't really know how many relatives these folks got. So we should, not that we want to make war with them, but if we do, what does that mean? How many of them people are literally going to come out of the woods at us? So, but anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amber says it'd be nice to see if they could all get along. And you know what? That's the thing. They did get along. They had that confederation just before the English got there. But then when that disease went through, I think at that point it was every man for himself. There wasn't enough to, it's called a power struggle. We can fight amongst ourselves, but you're not going to win because you got 3,000 soldiers. I'm not going to win. I got 3,000 soldiers. But guess what? There was a disease that went through, and I got 300 and you got 400 or 500. Well, or vice versa. No, you got the English on your side and I don't. Now
And the tide turns when you went from 3,000 to 300, and the
yeah,
white people's numbers stayed the same.
yeah, or went up. They were constantly going up.
Right. But I mean, yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
if you became friends with the English and they had guns and you had enemies, you were even though you had low numbers, you could be very powerful. Right?
Yep, because you had the white man.
Yeah.
White privilege.
Yes, yeah, exactly. White privilege.
No shame on me.
But that was the thing. The word savage, got mistranslated because eventually the Indians ran out of food, they ran out of money, they ran out of land to sell, and they backed themselves into a corner. And then what do you think happens then? Well, we sold all our land, we hunted all our beaver, we don't have any place to go. Our neighbors next door to us are ready to kill us if we go that way. And you want our land that we're standing on. The only thing we can do now is fight. And when they did, and the ruthless things they did, things just go south from there. You know what I'm saying? Anyway.
Yeah, and one other thing too I was thinking about earlier is when the first folks came over, they were Puritans and they were God-fearing people, and they were, this, that, and kneeling and praying a lot and so forth. And then, but subsequent folks that came over, sometimes they cleared out some of the prisons and the work camps.
Yes.
And so basically they weren't all these nice Christian folk. They were ruffians and drunkards, and so the quality of white people changed.
Well,
If that makes any sense. You went from all nice folks and with families to now you got ruffians and maybe a couple of pirates or somebody that was in prison, and you consigned yourself to go over, and so there were different kinds of mindsets of people who might have had murderous intent, basically, whereas the other folks didn't.
Well, a lot of those people I was reading today about that, and a lot of those people that did come over came over as indentured servants. They came over as basically as workers with contracts, some for up to 7 years. They're basically white slaves to the king or to a corporation back in the day. And other ones for their trip over had to serve somebody else for up to 2 years. And most of them that did come over, they were all poor people. You're probably right. Maybe some of them were criminals or something, but from what I read, most of these people were poor and they were indentured servants. They were with contracts for a company to give them half or more of their profits. And when the first colonies were set up, they were socialists. You take all your crops and stuff and you give them under one umbrella. Everybody was supposed to work hard and everything, but they weren't working hard until finally one guy says, hey, we're going to divide up the land and you go do your thing. And production of the farmland went way up because they weren't making anything for themselves. They were all just working as laborers, basically. And why do I got to work any harder than that guy? He's sitting under a tree. Why do I got to do any more than that woman over there? Because she only does weeds half a row and I got to weed 3 rows. You know what I mean? I ain't doing
it. In England and over there, they were in the process of serfdom.
Yes.
And so, so if you couldn't produce, then you were thrown into the poorhouse. And then they cleaned out the poorhouses. So there was a rich man that would come in and buy them up and pay whatever fines that the folks had, load them on a ship and send them to America. And that's how it, that's how, so they owned their life to the company or to whoever had the money to get them out of the debtor's prison.
Yeah. And they did. And that's the thing. People don't realize that, like nowadays people are in debt and you just go in and you file bankruptcy and you're good to go. Back in those days, when you got so far in debt, they put you in debtor's prison with bars. People, you owe, you're going to prison.
And your family had to support you. That you didn't get fed. If in debtor's prison, it wasn't like jail. Well, if you were in jail, they didn't feed you at all. But in debtor's prison, the families were expected to take care of you while you were there. If you wanted food, then they had to bring it to you.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So it was not a thing that you would even Daniel Boone. I was reading that about Daniel Boone. He escaped going debtor's prison several times. He was going to Kentucky to survey that land and make them roads, and even though he was doing service to the country, every time he got back, it'd been so long that all his debts were due, and he barely scraped by of paying whatever it was and moving on to just getting by without going to prison. You know what I mean?
The rich people have always been in control. Money has always been in control. I mean, there's always been the little guy like Boone who went off to survey and then got back, and what were his rewards? Debtor's prison.
Yeah. It's always about the money, and no matter how hard you work, no matter what you do, unless you're the guy on top, it's just more work. You live to work and work to live. I'm finding that out. It's like, man, all I do, the harder I work, the more harder I gotta work, and I don't like that. I don't feel like I'm winning the battle. You know what I mean? Some days it's a struggle. Anyway.
Yeah. And when you get to my age, you realize that all that struggle and you just barely broke even. For me.
Yes.
Now other people, that had better jobs than me and got paid more, they fared off better, but even then, I think that people, that we basically break even in life, but we can't take none of it with us. So
you're born with nothing and you die with nothing usually. Most of the time. Anyway, I'm going to read just a little bit more of this, and then we'll get on with the story for tonight, because this is kind of interesting. Now, we're going to move up to September 4th, 1632. One Hopkins of Watertown was convicted for selling a piece and a pistol with powder and shot. Remember, in the last little bit of the story, it says that the government, it must be observed, that made the prudent regulations forbidding the sale of arms to the natives. You can't sell guns to the natives. You got to keep those weapons to yourself. The natives get bows and arrows and you get a gun. Okay, so one Hopkins of Watertown was convicted for selling a piece and pistol with powder and shot to James Sagamore. Remember, he's one of the Indians, natives of Sketchum Queen there, for which he had sentenced to be whipped and branded in the cheek. Yuck. Whipped. That's where they tie you to a post and then they brand you on the cheek so everybody can see. That's got to be painful. It was discovered by an Indian, one of James' men, upon promise of concealing him, or otherwise he was sure to be killed. It was probably for some offense of this description that James was once forbidden to enter any English plantation under penalty of 10 beaver skins, a much better dispensation of justice, clearly, than to have sent an an armed force as to the people of Plymouth had been in the habit of doing on such occasions, to punish him in person. Wow. So you send a group of people to punish him in person. Gee. The following is an item of the account of Treasure Pythion stated in the General Court of 1632. Under the head of payments out of the common treasury, paid John Sagamore, brother, the 9th of October, 1632, for killing a wolf, one coat at 12 shillings. The account of James indicates that he was much less known among the English than his brother, and, as it appears, in company of several charges like these: to Jack Straw, one coat by a note from the governor; to Wismacus' son, 2 wolves and 2 coats. It may be fairly inferred that Sagamore hesitated not to put his dignity, so far as he was known, on the level of the eyes of the English, with the lowest of his countrymen. John and James died about the same time in 1633 of a mortal epidemic that prevailed among the Massachusetts Indians. Hubbard says that both promised, if they recovered from their sickness, to live with the English and serve their God. The reason why John, at least, had not already taken such a course may be gathered from some expressions in the curious tract, The New England First Fruits, which we cite the more willingly because in places of character of John in this true light. Sagamore John, says the learned author, Prince of Massachusetts, was from our very first landing more courteous, ingenious, and to the English more loving than others of them. He desired to learn and speak our language, and loved to imitate us on our behavior and apparel, and began to hearken after our God and his ways, and did resolve the promise to leave the Indians and come live with us, but yet, kept down by fear of the scolding of the Indians, had not the power to make good on his purpose. So, John and James succumbed to another disease that came around in 1633. Boy, these diseases keep coming around and just wiping them out left and right. Let me tell you, they didn't have a chance. Seems about the time they, do anything, they die out. You know what I mean?
To make good on his purpose.
Yes.
What was his purpose?
I
was from that statement, to make good on his purpose. We don't speak that. We don't speak that way these days.
He was saying he was going to make good on his purpose. He was telling the white man he was going to come and live with him. And
I understand, but I was just referring to the phrasing of things. We don't speak like that these days.
Oh, yeah. That's
to make good on his purpose.
That's why it's
purpose. I mean, people would just freak out with that. What are you talking about? To make good on his purpose. Anyway,
this book it's really hard to read because it's wrote in 1843, and like you said, we don't speak like this, so it's hard to read in some way or another. I mean, some of it just goes floating along, but then others it's like Yoda talking.
If you don't understand how they thought back then and terminology, like even today, our slang and so forth, and how we write. That's why I sort of brought it up. But we don't speak like that these days.
Off the Hook says, I get confused. These books are BS in my opinion. Well, I explain, please. I don't know how it's BS. It's kind of it's a history book. It's a biography anyway. The idea is it's a recording of some of the things that happened, and they got paid off in coats for wolves, because I suppose wolves were attacking their herds and sheep and cows and things like that. And so if you kill a wolf, you get a coat. You got two coats, one coat, and if you don't do what they say, you're going to owe them 10 beaver skins or you get whipped. And then if you sell a gun to the Indians, you're going to get whipped and branded on the cheek. No proof to date it. Yes. I don't know what she says that it's no proof to date it. I don't know how to date it. It's just talking about it dates it in this book of 1632.
It's an old book. That's how you know he's not reading it from something else. That's an old book, and that's what they wrote back then and published.
And maybe she's saying are the people real or not? I don't know. These are the stories that were passed down and wrote about. As you can see, I looked it up on the internet, and there's plenty of articles about these folks. But as you go back into the readings in these books, apparently they were talking more. They had more detail back in the day.
And what's not written is the importance of these people that they would write about them.
Yeah, and she says it's just her opinion, and I agree. But in my thought, it is that these are more believable because we still have writings and books and records from those times. Whereas when you start talking about, say, like the ancient Egyptians, that stuff. People are just trying to interpret carvings on rocks, and we still don't know why the pyramids do what they do. We're just guesstimating. We don't know what those people were thinking back in the day. There's really no hard evidence for a lot of our history, and until we get to the 16 and 1700s, where people are really writing stuff down, and then there's good records of it, and people are passing this along on written paper and in books, and just like this book, if it's wrote in 1843, it's a good chance that this guy who wrote it actually could look, went to the Hall of Records in Massachusetts and actually looked up some of these things in the books, and
probably spoke with some of the folks from back then. They were still alive. So as a young man, he heard those stories, and and so because there are a lot of stories that were passed along through the taverns back then, because they didn't have anything else. So storytelling, and the town crier would come to town and tell all the news to everybody on the square, and but somebody, was important enough to where that person thought to write it down and then have it published. But there was also a big market for Indian stories and that kind of thing back then. I mean, it was big business. So if you had a story that was and even also had some history with it, there were rich folks that, especially ladies sitting in the parlors, we, love to have those books to be able to read, So they were, and also to go back to England with kind of thing too. So, but by that time, there were probably enough printers in the United States to, does it say printed in the U.S. or England?
Yeah, this is printed in U.S. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is by B.B. Thatcher Esquire in New York, from the Harper and Brothers, 82 Cliff Street, 1843. So anyway, like I said, real or not, I think Lucky says all those places are real. He's been there. I guess, like I said, they're real places. They must have had, that's the history that got passed along, and we're just going through it. Just like today. Heck, we don't even know our history that's going on right now in front of our eyes. And it's kind of
Nope.
sad because it's all gobbled up by the news. And then the winners of whatever it is, they will print the history they want us to believe and teach it to our children, and they'll grow up believing whatever they want.
Yeah, they won't know what's going on now because it won't be written that way. You know, if you looked at the Main Street News and then looked at really what's going on, it ain't the same. You
Yeah.
know, so what's going to be written in the future, who knows? But at least back then they were simpler times. So, you know, the many books that I've read and you've read over the years, you know, it's good to get an old book because the chances of it being at least more truthful
At least
is,
I think it's so, yeah.
you know, because folks of course there were some embellishments, but the basic facts were true because they wanted to represent the truth. You know, even the little dime street novels of Jesse James and the gunfighters, you know, some of them guys got in trouble if they printed you know, well, that's not true. You know, you wrote a story about Gunslinger Slim and he didn't really exist and shame on you, you know, and then he was hunted down for his lies. So people had a tendency to try to tell the truth, you know,
Yep.
as more than not.
Yeah. No, yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Like it says, history is confusing. Unless you're there, you're not really going to know. Heck, even if you are there, you might even not know what's really going on.
Right.
Look at it. Elderberry says he researched his family and found things he would never have dreamt of. Yeah, go figure. You know, that's the thing. You speak your truth, and nothing wrong with it. It makes us question the real history. I wish I had more time that I could really go and dig into all of this and go to the libraries of Congress or go to those historical places and actually find the scripts of the original writers and research it myself to prove it right or wrong. But then again, I wouldn't be able to do a weekly show either at that rate. But like I said, I buy these old books and I double check with like I said, we found out some stuff for the beginning that's what we have on the internet. And we know what's on the internet is usually not all that correct. But they leave from that to what I read, they left out a lot of detail. They basically said she had this land and she sold it to the English, blah, blah, blah. But it was not really true. What is true is that she was the widow of a powerful chief. She inherited the land, and then the next chief up took her as a wife, and then they sold the land, and he got a coat and a fine suit and boots and socks and the whole 9 yards for selling the land. So she was just, a participant in all of this. She may have helped make the decision, but the husband, the next husband, he got all the compensation. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Anyway, on to the story. That's what we're going to do. Story is next. We harp on it too much. It just doesn't fit well with me either. Because it's like I wish I could. I just wish that I could prove more or really find out stuff. I want to be that Indiana Jones guy or, whatever it is that goes out and really finds the hidden treasures or the cave wall paintings. But then even if I did, I don't even know how I would interpret them. It's like I'm just making shit up because I don't know what it means.
Yep, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, that's kind of what it boils down to.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see. What do we got on the docket tonight here? And there we go. Look at that. that the right one? How Mad Buffalo Fought the Thunderbird.
Yeah, let me catch up. I was pulling cards. And there's a whole stack of them too, by the way. But anyway, so how Mad Buffalo Fought the Thunderbird. And we are in Indian books from and fairy tales. By Margaret Compton from 1907. So would always like to give references when we can. Once upon a time, the Indians owned all the land around the Big Sea water. The Good Spirit had smoked the pipe of peace at the Redstone Quarry and called all the nations to him. At his command, they washed the war paint from their faces, buried their clubs and tomahawks, and made themselves pipes of red sandstone like the one that he had fashioned. They too smoked the peace pipe, and there was no longer war among the nations, but each dwelt by its own river and hunted only the deer, the beaver, the bear, or the bison. In those happy days, there lived on that shore of the Big Sea water, which is directly under the Hunter Star, an Indian whom all his nation trusted, for there were none like him in courage, wisdom, and prudence. From his early childhood, they had looked to him to do some great deed. He had often mastered the grizzly bear and the strong buffalo. Once he captured a buffalo ox, so large and so strong that a dozen arrows did not kill it. And from that day, he was known as Mad Buffalo. When the magic horns were needed for medicine for the people, Mad Buffalo went forth in the moon of flowers, and by cunning, not by magic, cut them from the head of the great horned serpent. For this the people loved him, and he sat with the oldest and the wisest of the tribe. Their greatest trouble in those days was the mysterious thunderbird, which was often seen flying through the air. It had black and ragged wings, and as it moved swiftly overhead, they darkened all the earth. On moonlit nights, no harm came, but when it passed in the daytime, or when the moon princess was journeying to see her brother, the sun prince, and her shining lodge was hidden by the beautiful red, the thunderbird did evil to all who fell under its shadow. Great curiosity existed as to its nest, but no one had dared to follow it, nor had any hunter discovered a place where it seemed likely that it could hide. Some thought it lived in a hollow tree. Others that its home was in the sandstone caverns, but it had never been seen to alight. One day in the winter, Mad Buffalo set out in search of food for his family. He had to travel to the lodge of the beavers across the big sea water and far up the river. He trapped a fat beaver, slung it over his shoulder, and started for home just as the full moon showed through the treetops. While crossing the lake, when he was inside of his own wigwam, a great shadow passed before him, shutting out all light. After it had gone, he looked about him for the cause. The night was clear and the moon so bright that the hunter's star could be seen but faintly. But objects about him were as plain as in the day. At first he saw nothing, for the thunderbird was directly over his head. But as it circled, he caught sight of it. It made a swift movement downwards, pounced upon him, and lifted him with all he had into the air. He felt himself rising slowly until he was far above the earth, yet not so far as to prevent him seeing what was going on in the village. He could even see his own wigwam and his children in the doorway. They saw him and were terribly frightened. Their mother failed to comfort them, for they knew by heart all the dreadful tales that were told of the thunderbird. They themselves had seen the beautiful birch tree, which they had often climbed, torn up by the roots and lie black and dead in the forest. And the oak tree where the warriors assembled was split to its base by this terrible creature. The yellow cedar, whose boughs were used for the canoe that sailed on the big sea water, was scorched and blighted by the thunderbird. Mad Buffalo's heart did not fail him. He grasped his spear firmly and waited his chance to do battle with the monster. Faster and faster they went towards the north, straight across the big sea water, rising higher and higher in the air. At last they came to a great mountain where no trees grew. The top was solid, bare, rugged rock, while the sides were formed of sharp boulders, with here and there a small patch of coarse grass and a few stunted furze bushes. In the cleft of the highest rock overhanging the water was the nest of the thunderbird. It was made of the tendons of human beings, woven with their scalp locks and the feathers they had worn when living. Still, Mad Buffalo was not afraid. As the bird neared its home, it croaked and muttered, and the sound was echoed and re-echoed till the noise was deafening. Worse than this, the creature tried to dash him against the rock, driving him towards it with its wings. And when these struck him, his flesh stung and smarted as if touched by coals of fire. By violently wrenching himself and balancing his spear, he managed to escape uninjured. At length, with one powerful blow, the bird drove him into its nest. It then flew away. Mad Buffalo was stunned, but only for a moment. On coming to himself, he heard a low crackling noise of thunder and found that he was left to the mercy of a brood of wild, hungry young thunderers, for whose food he had probably been brought. They began at once to pick at his head, uttering croaks like the old bird, only not so loud, but as they were many, the sound was, if possible, more dreadful. Seeing that they were young birds, Mad Buffalo supposed they would be helpless. And when the old bird was out of sight, he ventured to fight them. Raising himself as well as he could, he struck at one with a spear. Thereupon they all set upon him, beating him with their wings and blinking at him with their long, narrow, blood-red eyes, from which darted flashes of lightning that scorched his hands and face. In spite of the pain, he fought bravely, though when they struck him with their sharp wings, it was like the prick of a poisoned arrow or the sting of a serpent. One by one, their strength failed them, and they were beaten down into the nest. Mad Buffalo took hold of the largest and strongest, wrung its neck, and threw it over the precipice. On seeing this, the others crept closer together and did not offer to touch him again. He seized another, pulled out its heart, threw the body away, and spread the skin over the edge of the nest to dry. Then, filling his pipe from a pouch of wolfskin suspended from his belt, he sat down to smoke. While resting, he wrung the necks of the other two birds and threw them into the big sea water, saving only their hearts and claws. When he had killed them all, he took 4 short whiffs at his pipe, pointing as he did so to the kingdoms of the 4 winds and asking them for assistance. Then he got inside the dry skin, fastened it around him with the claws he had saved, put the hearts of the young thunderers on his spear, and started to roll down the side of the mountain. As he tumbled from rock to rock, the feathers of the skin flashed like fire insects. When he was about halfway down, he straightened himself out and, lifting the wings with his arms, found that he could fly. He moved slowly at first, but was soon used to the motion and went as fast as the great bird could have done. He crossed the big sea water and winged his way over the forest until he came to the place from which he had been taken 10 days before. There he alighted, tore off the bird skin, and started homewards. His wife and children could hardly believe that it was he, for they supposed the young thunderers had long ago picked his bones. He broiled the hearts of the birds, which crackled and hissed so that they could be heard a mile from the wigwam, but the meat was juicy and tender. The old bird was never seen again in that part of the country. Hunters who came from the Rocky Mountains say that it built a nest on the highest peak, where it raised another brood that sometimes came down towards the earth, despoiling the forest and the grain fields. But they flew higher than formerly, and from that day that Mad Buffalo fought them, they never interfered with men. Their nest henceforth was made of the bones of the mountain goat and the hair of his beard. Now, when Indian children hear the fire crackling, they say It is the hearts of the young thunderers. For all their nations know of the brave deed of Mad Buffalo. The end.
That was a good one.
Yeah, it was. No heads chopped off, but he did wring their necks.
Yeah, they got their heads.
And what is it with the hearts? He tore out their hearts. But I guess it was the easiest thing that he could take home to cook.
Yeah. Oh, pretty interesting. Well, back in the day, the heart was the heart is a big muscle, and that's where they got a lot of their protein from too. So that kind of all works out.
Yep, and if you've never had beef heart,
Yep.
It's got a distinct taste to it for sure.
That's for sure. Oh yeah. Anyway. Cool. I just want to comment on Off the Hook. She said something interesting, and she says, I keep slipping into another dimension. I love it when I'm there. And I want to comment on that because I've had the same kind of feeling lately. So it's really hard to describe, but I know what you're talking about. It's like there's this place and then there's this other place. And sometimes I'm there and sometimes I'm here. And it happens just like that. Anyway, it's kind of weird.
And today, even to that point, I felt like I was not really falling, but tumbling between the two. I don't know where the other place was, but at one point I was like, I opened my eyes at the wrong time, and I was like upside down. Like, what?
So, yeah. To me, it's nothing like that. It's like it's a whole different place. Like there's a whole different world. I'm experiencing a whole different life there, and then 1 second I'm there, and then the next second I'm back, and then I can remember it for a second, and then it's gone. But I don't know if it's me being tired or whatever, but I'll just close my eyes, and next thing you know, it's like 5 minutes passed, and I'm like, what the heck happened? I just, I've spent like 2 weeks somewhere else.
Yep. And these last few days, today was kind of weird, but I'm sitting here and minding my own business and recalling things that I seem to have done, but in dreams. Like a place that I was at that I'd visited, and I was like, wait a minute, I had that dream like years ago, and I was going up a mountain or something, and something, and it was like, what? And why I thought of that, so there have been some really strange remembrances of dreams.
Yeah.
Little catches, little phrases, little somethings. And today was like,
have you ever dreamed the same dream twice?
Oh, yeah. Too many times.
Yes, exactly. And it's kind of weird, like it says, or you pick up on a dream that you had another day or a different time, and it's like, I've been here, done this, or seems like I said, it's just so familiar. It's like I've been doing that lately, and it really gets me. But anyway, okay, you got cards? I got.
Well, yes. Okay. Also, that the dreams that I'm remembering happened years ago. It didn't just happen yesterday. They happened a while back. So there's quite a spread tonight. Oh boy, this should be fun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards tonight. I think that's a new one. And 3 of them are upside down. and 3 of them are right side up, or whatever that means. So the first one out is fox,
Ah,
camouflage. Now it's upside down, and wily fox has many allies. And one of the natural gifts of fox is to adapt to its surroundings, like a chameleon. Fox's ability to be unseen allows it to be the protector of the family unit. If danger arises, Fox is Johnny on the spot. The Great Spirit in the Choctaw tongue honors Fox with the duty of keeping the family together and safe. That's right side up. Upside down. Watch out for wily fox. If this card has appeared reversed, someone may be watching you, big brother, and trying to figure out your next move. If you look deeper, however, it may be that you are watching yourself to prove to yourself that you exist. If you have become a wallflower to the point of disappearing, you may need to decide that you are worth noticing. In other words, get off the wall. Contrary fox is as foolish as it is cunning. And you may have fooled yourself into believing that your low self esteem is due to your being born plain or having an ordinary life. This is camouflage of a different sort, in that you have camouflaged your true desire to experience life with friends, with joy, with purpose. In any case, you are put on notice to be aware of apathy and self-induced boredom. Ooh. Beware of apathy and self-induced boredom. The next one is frog upside down, number 38. Apathy and boredom. Frog is cleansing, and I think we had frog last week. And but this is upside down. So frog sings the songs that bring the rain, bring the cleansing, and makes the great dirt road more bearable. Water prepares and cleanses the body for sacred ceremony. It is the element we understand best in the womb. Frog, like ourselves, is a polywog in the fetal waters and only learns to hop after it experiences the world of fluidity. I love that line, the world of fluidity. Now, upside down, frog has slipped in the mud and is lying on its back, unable to right itself. Get ready for more mud in your eye. The contrary position of frog can denote an unwillingness on your part to wipe the mud out of your eye and out of your life. Mud can turn from mire to bog to quicksand if you don't recognize its effects on your present situation. So we just had apathy and boredom, and now frog's upside down, and you're not willing to throw the mud out of your eye. So is this a a reoccurring theme here? The next is snake upside down. We haven't had snake in a while. We've got snake and otter and grouse. Oh, and hummingbird. Snake is transmutation, and the transmutation of life, death, rebirth cycle is exemplified by the shedding of the snake skin. It is the energy of wholeness, cosmic consciousness, and the ability to experience anything willingly and without resistance. It is the knowledge that all things are equal in creation, and that those things which might be experienced as poison can be eaten, ingested, integrated, and transmutated if one has the proper state of mind. So in other words, if you get lemons, make lemonade, basically. If you have drawn this symbol in the reverse, you may have chosen to mask your ability to change. So now we got Fox, who's saying, you've got a little bit of apathy going on, and Frog upside down with mug in his eye, and you may have chosen to mask your ability to change. And by golly, this right now is a time of change, don't you know? Look at the idea that you may fear changing your present state because this may entail a short passage into discomfort. Does this discomfort keep you from assuming the viewpoint of the magician within yourself? Is the old pattern safe, reliable, and in a rut? Just like it says that you may, apathy. So in a rut, boy, those three cards are linked together. In order to glide beyond that place, which has become safe but non-productive, become the snake. Release the outer skin of your present identity. Move through the dream-like illusion that has insisted on static continuity. In other words, it's the same old boredom, the same old apathy. 3 cards in a row. Wow, that's really interesting. So get yourself out of the mud. Now, the next card, which seems appropriate, is hummingbird, right side up. And we like hummingbird because hummingbird is joy. Hummingbird is associated with the ghost shirt religion, which taught that a certain dance done properly would bring about the return of the animals and that white people would disappear. Oh joy, oh joy. Once again, the original people would know the joy of the old ways. In Mayan teaching, hummingbird is connected to the black sun and the 5th world. Hummingbird can give us the medicine to solve the riddle of the contradiction of duality. So in this duality, there's that part of you that wants to stay in the mud and live in apathy. And hummingbird is the connection between. The song of hummingbird awakens the medicine flowers. Because of the hummingbird's magical qualities, hummingbird feathers have been used for making all types of charms. If hummingbird is in your personal medicine, your love life is in joy. And we love life, and life is joy. The next one is otter. So we're coming out of the doldrums, and we have to look for the joy in our lives. And it's there. Hummingbird's got it for us. Number 8 is otter. And number 8 is woman medicine. The medicine held by Otter is a set of lessons in female energy. This applies to both men and women, as all of us have female sides. Now, in this time of energy shifts and so forth, we need to learn each other's energies. The otter's hide is very often used to make medicine bags for powerful women because it represents balanced female energy. Otter is always on the move and is very curious. Unlike other critters, otter will not start a fight unless it is attacked. Long ago in tribal law, if a woman were widowed, the character traits of the beauty of a balanced female side, the side of ourselves that creates a space for others to enter our lives without preconceptions or suspicions. So we gotta get the mud out of our eyes and quit being apathetic and look at the balanced female side of ourselves that creates a space for others to enter our lives without preconceptions or suspicions. Otter teaches us that balanced energy is not jealous or catty, it is sisterhood. And the last in the list is grouse, which is the sacred spiral, I think, and is definitely the dance. So there's 2 dances in here. Hummingbird says to dance in joy, and grouse is the sacred spiral. If you have grouse medicine in your cards, undertake a meditation on the various qualities of movement. What did we just come out of with otter? Keep moving. And hummingbird is flittering all around and can go in all directions. That's a lot of movement. So if you have grouse medicine in your cards, undertake a meditation on the various quality of movement within your world. Begin by visualizing the sun as one member of a huge group of stars, swirling in the massive pinwheel shape of the Milky Way. That's us, the Milky Way Soul Tribe. Then draw yourself out of this pinwheel of light and into the spiraling of your own DNA. The sacred spiral is important. Analyze the way you move through your world. Many spiritual disciplines ask that you cease all types of external movement in order to recognize the inner life. Grouse medicine, however, is an invitation to the dance. Grouse celebrates the divine source through its sacred spiral dance and offers this dance to you as a gift. So get up off your heinies, quit being despondent, and get the mud out of your eyes, cleanse yourself, jump around like otter and hummingbird, and dance the spiral dance. That's good medicine. That's good medicine. Thank you, spirits.
Very good.
That's good medicine right there.
Good.
I like that message. That's good medicine right there.
Yep. Sure is. Give a big shout out to everybody. Hopefully they all were listening and agreed with the cards. Yep. Off the Hook says, I agree, David. Thank you. Okay, there you go.
And that was 6 cards too, by the way.
Oh, you did it in a pretty record time. Holy cow. All right. Well, anyway, big shout out to Mary Wins, F Kitty, Off the Hook, Ember Dawn Rising. Thank you for coming tonight. Scotty Boy. Oh yes, Scotty Boy, you're just a gigolo. That's right. Back in the day, I bet you that's what you were. Anyway,
Just a gigolo everywhere I go.
yeah, there's a song of that. Lucky Stone was in the house. Elderberry. Who else is in here tonight? But anyway, I really appreciate everybody, each and every one of you, for coming tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Thank you, dear friends. We love you. We do, and I continue to pray that each and every day that each and every one of you will continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings of the universe. And remember to dance with the grouse.
That's right. And Mossy Man was in the house too. But anyway, Pearl Jones, and Richard the Red was here tonight too. Thank you for joining us. But anyway, either way, it was a great show. Get a little bit of history, the best we can give. Like I said, all I got to go on and is old books and new books and articles and internet stuff, but at least I don't just go to Wikipedia and find something there and just present it and say this is fact. But there's I do a lot of research to make sure that I'm giving best I can anyway. I do a lot of reading, a lot of listening, but anyway, and we find these great stories. David Null, you got the best stories. I tell you, pick out these really good books and best stories that you could possibly do. And if it wasn't for you being this expert reader, man, I tell you, that some of these stories would be confusing, but you tell them with grace. I tell you. Anyway, thank you for all you do. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you all that have come and listened to us. We really do appreciate you.
Yes, absolutely. Anyway. Oh, Jargo Smith was in the house too. There we go. Hawkeye. Mary says, Hawkeye, you having a show tonight?
Yeah, for a little bit.
Okay. There you go. Awesome. Good deal. Thanks, everyone. Love you all. Good deal. Yes. Is the show over? Scotty boy, the show ain't over until you say the show is over. Is the show over? Anyway, good. David, have a good show tonight. I got to get to bed here soon. Been putting up corn for the last few days. Man, I think I got 27 bags of corn put up already.
Wow.
And I haven't even got all the rows picked. Well, put it that way. I got a lot of work to do yet. So tomorrow night, I'm going to be putting up corn again. So I hope everybody is getting their vegetables harvested. I know the tomatoes are starting to come in now. And I'll be doing that next. I got cucumbers and I got to put a beets and oh boy, it's been a lot of work. So I'll be canning lots in the next week or two. Lots of stuff to put up. Garden is coming in. I planted way too big. One man shouldn't have to do all that work. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Remember, you got a little garden to spread the vegetables out. Give some of your neighbors. I know I am. I just gave away a lot of cucumbers and a lot of corn, and I still got more. I haven't even picked the beans yet. Jeez, I'm getting way behind. But I'm spreading it out. I'm being the frequency I want to receive, because that's what we all need to do. No, don't forget to go out and be the frequency you want to receive and get yourself your own Milky Way shirt. Ends at the end of the week. Link is in the description below. Get yours right away. And they're good. They're like $20. Support the cause. Everybody, love you all so much. Remember, be the frequency you want us to receive. Love you all. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.